Hey, good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander, let's dive right in.
First question this morning is coming from Douglas Carmichael. Universe, the control software that powers Office Hours, is now owned by Thomann, the online retailer. What does this mean for the future of the product?
Jonus?
I think most likely what we're going to see is that they're going to accelerate and get more consumer focused. Right now, one of the things that you often find is you build with it and they don't have enough resources to build, like, for example, a vmix connection out with every single function, because that is a lot of work. So often it is specific for projects that they did. So I am quite excited about it, and it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. It's an interesting partner that they have, but a big retailer wanting to get a piece of the control platform, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Alex?
Yeah, I think it's going to. I agree with Jonus that I think it's going to make it makes a lot of sense for them. They're going to have a lot more resources. They've got a great product, and as Jonus said, you feel that they just don't have enough resources to get it off the ground. They're going to have an incredible partner to expand what they're doing. We don't know Thomann very much in the United States, but they are huge in Europe, and incredible service. I've ordered a couple things from them, and their system rivals. I mean, it's actually better than B&H's as far as how quickly it moves, and their customer services. I mean, you get a response in hours typically from them. Really, really amazing. So I think it's going to be a great Universe is going to be a great addition for Thomann, and I think that they're going to give them the resources they need to be successful.
Next question.
This one's from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Yesterday, Ronny Hofsøy mentioned the app Notion, so I tried it. It looks like a lot of setup. Is it worth it? What's the use case? Thoughts?
Jonus? We might have lost Jonus. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. Well, Jonus probably knows more about Notion than I do. I think he was talking about it earlier related to the fact that he's used it some. I've played with Notion a little bit. I have to admit that we were looking at what we were going to use for a project that I have that probably is going to extend 5 to 10 years. And we went ahead with Airtable instead of Notion, which is considerably more expensive, but much more full-featured. So that was kind of the decision process that we had related to that. And I'll let Jonus talk about his more direct experience with Notion.
Yeah, and I know he's still getting his audio connected back up. But you've been doing a lot with Airtable recently.
I think I needed something in the cloud, and I've built databases for years in different ways, right? Not databases, but managed data. So I've managed data in HyperCard. I programmed an entire radio station in HyperCard and built not an email system, but a postcard mailing system in HyperCard. Wow. So I put thousands of people's home addresses into HyperCard, and then I could identify what zip codes and what they were connected to and what bands they liked, and everything else was all because of where I got their addresses when I was working for Sony, and could literally print labels for postcards from HyperCard. And then this is 30 years ago, or more than 30 or 35 years ago. Then I used FileMaker for a long time, and I really wanted something that was web native to use. And so we looked at a bunch of stuff, and actually Mark, the owner of Own I Know, suggested Airtable. And at first I had heard about it for quite some time, but I jumped into it, and it just feels like every time you peel it open, there's a whole nother room full of goodies for you to have. It's expensive though. And it can rack up, but it's not as expensive as Salesforce, which I played with a little bit. So it's kind of, I think that's what they figured out, was how to be less expensive than Salesforce. It doesn't do all the things that Salesforce does, but it does. I think the interface is so much. I find the Salesforce interface to be a little opaque.
And whenever you're in any of these database systems, these relational databases, and you're trying to create a really slick front end to make it easy to get data into the system and make it easy to separate, okay, these users have edit permissions, these users only need to read it, these users only need to read half the fields, and the other, dozen or so need to be
And I'm building lots and lots of interfaces, to your point. Like I've got, I think, 8 or 9 interfaces for different stakeholders within our project, and they all just see what they need to see. And some of them are allowed to edit, and most of them are not. But this is the data, and that data is dynamic, and I'm not exporting it out, and I'm making it work. And then I'm building lots and lots. Right now, I'm designing the forms so we can send something out, and everyone just fills out a little form. But that all feeds directly into the database that's connected to what I'm doing.
And that part is a lot of setup, but it's a lot of heavy lifting on the front end so that you never have to think about it again. It just rolls. It's rock solid. And it's not to be overstated how nice it is to not have to worry about two different systems maintaining like a mirror database to one another or talking to one another when it's all housed in the same place. You're eliminating somebody's job to babysit that, because the worst thing that happens is if you have two disparate systems that are trying to talk to one another and then that connection breaks down, if there's any gap in the time where that breaks down and you're still taking action based on the information, that can start to, to err is to be human, but to really screw things up, you need a computer. Yeah. You need to have that all in one place if you can. I don't know if Jonus is back, if you wanted to mention anything or throw in your 2 cents on the Notion. No, all right, cool.
There was a Notion question that we took completely to Airtable. Whoops, because that's what we were talking about before the show. So anyway, it looks reasonably good. We chose to go a little to swing a little higher than what it does, but I'm not saying it's not useful. It just wasn't useful for what we're doing.
Awesome. All right, next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What are some affordable prosumer professional microphone floor stands?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, you have to decide what kind of load you're going to put on this thing. Microphones are generally pretty light, so you don't need much in terms of stability. Although, if you get into a microphone boom where you've got a large arm and you want to fly a microphone out, then suddenly you're in a whole different class of things. The first thing I look for, let's just look at some basic kind of microphone things. This is a tripod stand. They're lighter, they're easier to travel with, but they are not quite as stable in my thinking. The other thing is a traditional round cast iron base. This has been around for a long time. They do make this out of other materials, but the traditional ones were cast iron. They're really heavy. They're better in a fixed studio when you're not traveling very much. Here's one of the pages, and you can see the triangle Atlas stand there. That's another alternate that is very heavy and very stable. I really like those Atlas stands. In fact, for years, I had dozens of the Atlas big stands, and they really did great work. They lasted forever, and there was never a problem. So you're going to decide, what form factor do I want? Do I have to have it mobile, or is it going to be fixed in the studio? You can choose from steel, aluminum. They even make them out of carbon fiber now. I've seen some plastic ones. Do not do that. They're terrible. The other thing you're going to look at is collapsibility. Do you want to travel with it? And if so, how many stages or tiers in the stand is? You can find some that collapse down really small, which is useful if you travel a lot. And the last factor for you is just durability. Are you going to buy once and have it for your entire career? Every mic stand I have in this building is probably at least 20 years old, and they're all still working perfectly. So think about your investment.
Alex?
John Wallace suggested these. This is the K&M mic stand, which he says is buy once, cry once. Now, if you really want to buy once and cry once, the ones that I have that I have a couple of are these. These are the Triad Orbit T2s, and these things are beasts. Now they're really heavy, but they are. I've got a couple that we use as a stand for some spherical stuff because of they're heavy and they're very stable. And Mickey said for professional work, Atlas stands and Triad Orbit. But the Triad Orbit ones are beasts. They're not the most cost-effective solution, but they're incredible stands.
Alexander?
This is one area where I don't recommend trying to save money. And in fact, you don't have to spend a lot to get something that's reliable. And as someone who's sold thousands of mic stands, I highly recommend you look at something like K&M. The one that Alex showed is the 210/9 model with the telescoping boom. It is the #1 top-selling K&M mic boom that they have. And I can tell you there's a massive difference in quality between a $50 mic stand and a $100 mic stand, and that K&M costs about $100. And I've seen a lot of cheaper mic stands come back with stripped parts. Guess which ones don't come back? The Can-Am ones. So I'd recommend getting those. For even higher end stuff, if you've got massively heavy tube condenser microphones, I would look at something like Latch Lake stands. They have these pneumatic ones and they got big cast iron base with caster wheels on it. You could roll it around. Anytime you've seen a behind the scenes video of a recording studio with these big stands, a lot of times it is Latch Lake, so that's good. Triad Orbit's good, very good as well.
Good, Courtney.
Well, I agree with pretty much everything everyone said. I think the Atlas. The Atlas. Wait a minute. Where is it? There it is. Okay, sorry about that. The Atlas stands. They're made out of steel. The stand part is made out of chrome-plated steel, and the base is, as was mentioned, cast iron. So the base weighs about 5 to 10 pounds, depending upon the sizes that you're getting. So you don't want to travel with these. And they're about $66, so that's worth the money. And you can put something fairly heavy on it, even a little small boom arm. Now, if you want to go super cheap, then you can go for the $20 with the boom arm. But I wouldn't put anything more than about a 10-ounce microphone on these. You can travel with them because they have their traveling case. You have to make a decision because the bases that have these 3 legs, you give up a lot of floor space for that. So you have to, it's a compromise. How much floor space do you need to take up? And do you need to travel with a sandbag if you're going to put anything heavy on the end of that boom arm? You need to bag that so it doesn't tip over when somebody bumps into it or grabs it. But you can get away as cheap as $20, but I wouldn't advise it.
Bill?
Just one more note about the connections. You're going to have some kind of friction collet on this thing in order to put the stand at a particular height and lock it down. And I just pay attention to those. The better mic stands, the parts are available. If you really want to keep it through your entire career, stick with somebody who has a good parts distribution system, because I have occasionally had to change those friction collets out. And it's nice to be able to get it and not have to buy a new stand just because you need a part fixed after many years of use.
And Alex?
Yeah, and one that I have that I got a couple of that are not, I would say, the highest quality stands, but they served a specific purpose are these. These are the mic stand, and they're from Hypercast or whatever it is. It's some kind of Chinese manufacturer, but the reason that this one's useful is I can put 2 of these into a 1510 with a bunch of other cables and other things like that. So it completely breaks down into almost nothing, and it looks a little cleaner at a venue when I'm doing an interview. So, one of my big problems with mic stands was that I had to carry them out of case. And so being able to put them being able to have a mic stand that I could break all the way down into a 1510 and then pull it out and set it up in a couple minutes was useful.
Your questions and your votes drive the show, and the way you get in there is Makana. And while you're in there, you can also chat with the other producers, ask questions, and vote on questions. Now, if you don't have access, it's pretty easy. Just sign up at officehours.global/join, and then you'll get an email with links to Makana, how to get into Discord, all the good stuff. You'll be on the inside track. Next question.
From the QR code, Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C., what's the best option when you need to connect more than 3 USB devices, encoders, Stream Deck, etc., to a MacBook that only has 3 while running OBS?
Alex?
Yeah, I would look at the big thing that you have to deal with is bandwidth. So making sure that hub is going to have enough bandwidth to move this through, because what happens is a lot of people buy ones that aren't as fast as they need, and then they end up with losing frames and audio glitches and so on and so forth. The one that I would recommend looking at is probably OWC. They have a variety of Thunderbolt hubs, and if you're on a Mac, if you're on a PC, you're looking for USB. If you're on a Mac, I strongly recommend a Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 5 hub. This is the Thunderbolt. Oops, I get the wrong page up. This is the Thunderbolt 4 hub from OWC. And they are, but this one's going to take one input and make 3 of them out of it, and it's going to have the bandwidth that you need to make it happen. But if you're going to put audio or video into a Mac, don't do anything less than a Thunderbolt 4 to make sure that you have a stable connection.
Jonus?
Yeah, like Alex said, make sure that you use Thunderbolt and calculate your bandwidth. And one thing to keep in mind with the Stream Deck, it's often underestimated how much bandwidth that really needs, because people are like, oh, it's just a couple buttons. But what you need to keep in mind is what is inside there is actually a display. So you have to send a whole 720p or 1080p signal to the Stream Deck. Not every sec, not all the time, not everything updates, and all that still applies. But keep that in mind. And then I would also keep in mind, if you use multiple capture cards or encoder cards, think through how, if you have an issue with that and you have a USB or USB-C or Thunderbolt issue and you need to replug things, put those on two separate controllers and on two separate connections. So like, let's say your main camera has an issue and you just need to replug it. Well, make sure that your secondary camera is not on the same hub or dock. So that way, if you have issues with that, you switch over to your secondary camera, replug the thing, go back, and everything is great. So keep that in mind. Everything you plug in, make sure that you have separate and diverse paths. And then also keep in mind that you might need to also add Ethernet to that. And then you need to keep in mind, if you have Ethernet on one of your hubs, now you can't unplug that during your show anymore without your live stream going offline.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. If you have a Logitech Litra Beam light, here is how to make it turn on and off automatically with Zoom calls. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Jonus.
So I pulled up his little graphic, and it's pretty interesting. In their app, they now have this feature where it activates when the camera is being turned on. So I think that's pretty neat. In other news, I was really excited that there's now open source libraries to control those. For those who don't know what this magical Litra light is that we're talking about, I have the Litra Glow, which is the first edition. What they have done is in the diffuser, there's actually lenses in there that create a softer light than should be possible for this area. And they are pretty neat lights. I like them to ship them to people because similar to what you might have for a webcam, they have this little bracket and then it extends. So you put it on a monitor like that. Then you plug it in USB-C. You can control it through the app, but also through the button. So it's very simple, user-friendly. And for those who are wondering, yes, it is on a normal 3/8 inch. And you can also put your other webcam there. And this is a really nice stand because it gets you higher than what your normally webcam is at. It's a really neat product.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C., looking for an inexpensive teleprompter that doesn't need drivers or software to be installed on a Windows computer for video teleconferencing. Any thoughts?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, prompter people make some affordable camera mounts with beam splitters. Now, this includes this monitor here, which can hook up to, I believe it has HDMI inputs of 400 nits. So you're not going to want to use this outdoors. You can also get this for around $799 without the monitor, and then you could go with a separate monitor. If you want to go cheaper than that, Glide Gear is a Chinese manufacturer that makes these units that are you can get them for $199. That's without the display. So you'd have to put your own display in there. They're designed for an iPad, but iPad is kind of problematic for connecting to a Windows PC. So you would want to get a separate monitor to go in there. And I've used for years these eYoYo monitors. Now, they're not very high resolution, but most of them have image reverse built into it. So you're going to need to reverse that image going into these monitors. And most of the eYoYos have a variety of inputs, composite, VGA, and HDMI. So you can switch. These are different sizes, 12-inch. They used to have a 15-inch, which I bought a lot of. And they have mirror reverse. This is a new one here, which is one of those portable monitors, but this is a touchscreen 13-inch, and I don't know if that one has image reverse on it. But they have, just look at eYoYo, they have a variety of these monitors that are fairly inexpensive, under a couple of $100 to get for a monitor that'll hook up to your PC, and you can send your image of whatever you're going to want to see in reverse into there. Most of them are 4x3, by the way, designed for the 4x3 glass for teleprompter.
Go ahead, Jonus.
So You also probably have seen the Elgato teleprompter. While that seems that you might need the software from them, what it actually is a display link monitor that works over USB-C, so that should work with most devices without needing drivers. One thing to keep in mind, displaying it on a monitor, you can use an HDMI monitor or anything else, but also keep in mind you somehow need to get the text in there. There's two apps that I've used. There's prompter.co. It's an online app. You can put it there, but one thing that you probably run into is that you also need to control it. There's also Fluid Prompter. They have a remote control feature where you just send the talent a website and then you can remotely scroll it for them. Or low latency WebRTC or Video Ninja, Zoom Feed also works. But take either like the teleprompter that works over DisplayLink or over HDMI out.
Yeah, I'm building a little teleconference suite in a new office right now. And one of my challenges was I wanted to put in a dock that anybody with a laptop could come in and use the system, but they needed to be able to use this in Teratron where you've got, you see who you're talking to in front of the lens. So I needed to go down the road of the monitor that had the built-in hardware reversing, but I was doing this kind of as a proof of concept, so I didn't want to spend a ton of money. And I bought the EOYO, the EM12DK that Courtney was just showing, and I was actually impressed. It has a surprising number of ports. Like I actually had VGA and BNC, which I was not expecting in a $140 monitor. And it's plenty bright. It's 16:9. It's 1080. It's pretty. Like I said, I'm impressed. It feels as expensive as it is. It feels very light. So there's not a lot going on here. But if all it's going to do is live in your teleprompter and never move from your office, it's probably going to get the job done. Hey, this weekend we've got our Saturday meeting is going to be our new format. So at 8:30 Pacific, 11:30 Eastern, we're going to have our new panelist meeting, and then about a half an hour after that, we're going to roll right into the panelist meeting. So it's new panelist this Saturday after the Q&A show, 8:30 Pacific, 11:30 Eastern. Next question.
All right, we're bringing back John Folt's question here for Jonus from Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Yesterday, Ronny Hofsøy mentioned the app Notion. So I tried it. Looks like a lot of setup. Is it worth it? What's the use case? Thoughts?
Go ahead, Jonus.
Yes, I found that with apps that are built around the idea of a database, you will find there's a lot of setup that you need, which can be a con, but also a pro if you have a workflow that you want to work with. I find that sometimes teams that don't have a dedicated workflow yet, they struggle. If you put them on a blank canvas, they sometimes struggle with the freedom a little bit too much. But we have done pretty cool things in Notion where because there's integration. So if I create a project for my company in Notion, it creates a Discord channel on our corporate Discord server that then links it to all my freelancers. I can assign freelancers, project managers, all that, do lookups. The other tool outside of that we use for our company is Retool, which is more like a front-end builder, but they also have databases built in. And the cool thing is it's a lot easier from there to call different APIs. So I have a database that manages all my AWS resources, and then I also have something that manages my Zoom rooms where I can click a button, it joins the right meeting and everything. So there's a couple options there. There's also a lot of templates for Notion. There's a whole, you wouldn't believe how big the Notion template market is for this is your second brain, for your personal life. This is how you do an agency. So I would check out some templates if you're having issues. But yes, it's a lot to set up, and you have to know where you want to go to be able to follow the path. Otherwise, I think you'll get lost a little.
The other thing that is worth mentioning with all of these database appliances is that they're often very well documented. So you're going to find that when you sit down with a Claude or a ChatGPT and you start to brainstorm and say, well, how do I do this and how do I do that? You end up having a pretty productive conversation and can get to close to the result you're looking for pretty quickly. Just like anything where you're trying to program or code or design something with one of these LLMs, you're going to have to take it to the end, but you feel much more like an editor than having to write on a blank slate. So check it out. Next question.
Omar Gadon in Orange County, California. What's the best way to record 8-camera ISOs, program, and clean feed in an AWS production environment? Running 2 instances of vmix with on 2 G4DN.4x large with an NDI discovery server, tailscale, and companion on T3.small.
Go ahead, Jonus.
There's a couple things about recording 8 ISOs plus 2 more feeds. So in total, we want to record about 10 feeds in the cloud. There's a couple options. All of those are NDI feeds, I'm guessing. So what you could do is on the cheapest solution, you set up another instance and you put NDI Studio Monitor or their free NDI recorder utility there. And you just start it 8 times. Keep in mind, now you are talking about NDI records, so it's Speed HQ. It's huge files. You probably need to transcode them before transferring them to your editors. But you could also add it on the fly because it's growing files. So we have done productions where we do that on a Premiere Pro system, and then people edit it while it's still being written. One step up is LiveMind Recorder. It hasn't gotten updates lately, but last time we used it, it still worked pretty great. Then there's NDI recorders that transcode it to H.264 or a more manageable file format first. So what you could do is, and what I've done is like launch 2 more vmix instances and use the vmix multicorder. We've had pretty good success with that. But then as you want to scale, and especially if it's long records and a lot of records, what we're using Nimble Streamer. And then we build a whole automation suite around that where what it does, it generates HLS based off those NDIs. And then I record those HLSs. But the great thing is now I have a full-on panel in my backend where I can say these 5 cameras from here to here. So like I can do within the segments. Our segments are 3 to 6 seconds large. So like that's how exact you can get the export. But that's how we then export. It automatically exports to S3, where then in our media file explorer for our clients, it just pops up. They can download it. So I would look at those options. There's also like a couple other NDI recorders. Direct Take is an option, but I don't really appreciate their model of not being able to move the license of a instance. So like I wouldn't build a system on it, because if you use your license once, it's burned, it's gone. You can't use it on another instance. Or if you scale up that instance, you're also in bad waters with them. And then there's one from KiloView as well. And we haven't had great success with that, but I would stick to the ones that I mentioned.
Alex?
Yeah, and Mickey suggests livemind.tv.
Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin. Is it possible to swap the audio track of a finished YouTube stream in YouTube Studio without losing the view counts? There were some audio issues, and I'd like to replace the existing audio with a separate recording.
Alex?
Nope. you can't change that. You can clip things there. You can clip things in but you can't change them. And the reason for that, and we've had some discussions with YouTube in the past about this. The reason for this is because what they don't want you to do is have a video of some meaning that builds up lots of followers, and then you change the meaning by changing either swapping the video or swapping the audio. So that's why it's not as archaic as it sounds. It's not like they can't do it. They have the tools to do it. They just don't let you because it's a security issue.
Bill?
100% agree with that. That's one of the reasons that I use Vimeo Pro as my CDN, because it does allow you to swap an existing video with a new one without losing all the links and the rest of that. But it's designed for a different purpose, and YouTube doesn't, for exactly the reasons Alex just enumerated.
Next question.
Chirag Chita in Dallas. Has anyone played with Zoom Room Pro AV? What are the use cases for Pro AV, and any idea of cost?
Jonus?
So Zoom Room Pro AV has been in a closed beta for half a year probably now. And now it's finally in a public open beta. So if you have a Zoom Room license, you can now go into your web interface on the Zoom website and enable Pro AV. That gives you a couple additional features. You can use the Pro AV controller, which is a controller designed by the Liminal team that allows you to do a little more pinning. So like you can do pinning of people, auto pin screen shares, galleries, all of that. One great feature is you can now select what type of screen debris you want on the gallery. So like in the past, you had the gallery view, but it was empty. So like it was just the pictures. And then what we noticed is that a lot of speakers, when we do these huge events, if they want to see a gallery, they're like, I need to see the names. I don't all know the names. So then you had to use the normal gallery view again. But the great thing now with Zoom Room's Pro AV controller is you can select what you want to see. Do you want to see the green border? Do you want to see reactions? Do you want to see the name tag? Where do you want to see the name tags? On the left, in the middle, on the right? So really great options. Then the NDI output from Zoom Rooms is what we all know and love. But now with Zoom Rooms Pro AV, for example, I have the other side here. I have a MS01, which is a little mini computer with a Duo 2 Decklink card. What that gives me is 4 SDI in or outputs into Zoom. In the Zoom Rooms Pro AV controller app, I can select for each of the Decklink devices, is it an input, is it an output? If it's an output, I can send the gallery there, I can send people there, I can send all the different things there, which is really great because now for your hybrid events, you can just pull whoever you need out there. And since we're talking about hybrid, one really cool additional feature is that now Zoom Rooms, with that Pro AV feature enabled, gets Dante. So now it's on a feature level, a lot closer to Zoom ISO. You can get Dante out. You can get up to 4 SDIs in, which that's a feature that we really like. So like you can send that little thing there, ship it somewhere for people, bring their cameras, plug it in. Now you have 4 sources into Zoom through the Zoom Room. And then for the developers under us, one thing that I would also like to highlight is there's now an SDK for the Zoom Rooms controllers. So I know in the past it was a little tedious and there were like all these weird workarounds and the API hasn't been there. Now there's the Zoom Rooms controller SDK that you can use to build your own controllers for Linux, Windows, and all that. So yeah, I would say anyone that has Zoom Rooms, check it out because that controller is really, really cool. It's tabbed, so you can like easily assign people. It's great to see that innovation and see the cool bleeding edge stuff that Zoom ISO had for a while now make it into a more mainline product. Oh, and price. The best thing is if you already have a Zoom Room, don't need to pay additional at this point in time. So it's $50 a month per Zoom Room, or if you have enterprise deals, that is different, but $50 per month and you get it per node.
You can ask your questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Quick and easy, nothing to sign up for, nothing to log into. Just askofficehours.global. Give us your name, give us your question. We'll work it in over the next couple shows. Next question.
From the QR code, Roger Martin in Tonto Basin, Arizona, looking for a budget-friendly broadcast video playout streaming 24/7, able to drag and drop videos to play on a particular time, days, weeks, or months. Suggestions?
Go ahead, Jonus.
So what you probably should look at for cheap or free open source, not open source, we didn't say open source, what you should look at for a free and cheap playout system for broadcast is Casper CG. Casper CG is a great engine that was built and funnels 24/7 live streams within Europe for a bunch of broadcasters. There's a lot of development there still, but that is only the engine. The simplest thing is go on GitHub. There's a project called Folder Playout for Casper CG. There you just have folders, drag and drop it in, watch folder picks it up, adds it in, and you have a functioning playout system. If you need more specific stuff, then that is something where you could look into Sophie. Sophie is an automation project now used at TB2. The BBC has their own version, so like it's an open source project that has a lot of active development that is able to control Casper CG, but also other things. On the really simple side, you could also use vmix with Companion and then like have 24 different playlists, and then depending on what time of day is, Companion just puts one or the other live. And in the end, if you just need something really, really simple, you could also use something like Playout B with the watch folder function, pull it in, and then you can select what should be played out when through something like Companion.
Alex?
Yeah, and those are all great suggestions. If you're looking for something that is kind of like designed for a broadcast station that is going to have live, it's going to be able to reschedule it, fill gaps, have live punch outs, all the things that you would need for a TV station. The two that we've used in the past, one of them is Softron Playout Solutions, Softron on the air. So there's a whole scheduling. They have a lot of integrated systems. These are on the air video, which we've used a lot. And it includes things like captioning and SCSI triggers and, lots of other things that you may need for kind of a real broadcast. On the node manager, so this is a scheduling system, replay, CG, switching. So there's that can actually run can integrate with your routers. So Softron does it. The other one that is available is Just Play, Tools on Air. And again, this is the kind of thing where you have, and these are playing out as you can see, both of them I think play STI, HDMI, NDI. This does SRT, UDP, 2110. I think Softron also does HLS streaming. And so these are built for like, I want to have a TV station like that, and a lot of TV stations that are building on a smaller route these aren't as inexpensive. They're a couple $1,000s at least to get off the ground. The nice thing is that when we started, they needed big computers, and now a little Mac Mini can be your playout node. So a lot of times you have a server that's kind of running everything, and then you have playout nodes, and you can have primary and backups, and one's in different places, and they're just getting the commands. So, but those are two to consider if you're really looking for like a TV station kind of automation.
Next question.
So it's from Paul Kovacs in Elkhart, Indiana. Have a HyperDeck HD Plus for records. What is the best way to record on it for reliability? SD card or SSD connected? Which brands or types of cards and what format?
Alex?
Yeah, I think that I would, my temptation, I don't have this HyperDeck. So most of the HyperDecks that we record to on a regular basis are SSD based. So these are the larger HyperDecks that we have. I've got a little shuttle here, but I don't record anything that matters on it, like it's for little replays and so on and so forth. So I don't have as much experience with that. I would say that I would probably lean towards an SSD hard drive, an external drive over an SD card from a reliability perspective, just because we've had a lot of record anomalies with SD cards. So I don't think I would lean into that. We've had pretty good, I've used a lot of T5s and these Samsung T5s. I don't think they make them anymore. The T7s we got early on and then didn't get any more. But you can also look at things like Angelbird, and they're going to have much more, these are designed for this kind of thing. There is a Mickey posted in the forum, Blackmagic support has an FAQ, and this is the SSDs that Blackmagic recommends. And I guess that now some of the T9, the Samsung T9 SSD drives are on that list. And Blackmagic does a pretty good job of that. Just remember that SSDs become much less efficient after about 40% fill, definitely after 50% fill. So when you think about, I need a terabyte, that means you need a 2 terabyte drive. If you need 2 terabytes, you need a 4 terabyte drive. Like don't record live over half on most of these external SSD drives because you'll find the performance, even when they're rated, the performance of them drops dramatically after the first half.
Next question.
John Fisher in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. The 3.5 millimeter output on a Shure MV7 has become unreliable. The mic is connected to a Mac Mini via USB. Is there another way to monitor the input without additional hardware?
Courtney?
I don't think you can monitor it directly without additional hardware. You could, of course, take the USB input to your Mac Mini and route it with audio hijack or something to your headphones in your Mac Mini. Maybe a better solution would that if you look at that headphone output on the back, if it's become unreliable, it's probably been splayed out and it could be replaced. Probably it doesn't look too complicated to replace it unless it's wave soldered onto a little circuit board inside there. But if it's an independent audio jack, you could have any good electronics technician replace that for you. That might be your best way to go. But I don't think you're going to get another output without adding hardware. Going through a separate preamp first before you go to the Mac. Or go to
Alex?
preamp with the XLR on.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, the little bag of them. This is like what Courtney might have been talking about here. I'm not using them for headphone jacks. I'm using them for a router, but these are 1/8 inch jack these little adapters. Are hard to kind of show, but this has a screw on, so you just knock a hole through it and push it through and close it up. And yeah, a bag of these costs like $8. So, this one, I don't know if it's exactly the same one as the MV7. Man, it doesn't look a lot like it. So it's there. You may just find that you can open it up and solder it back. It's probably just a loose connection that is a 5-minute problem with a soldering iron. But I think that, usually what happens is as you insert and remove, you're just slowly moving everything around in there, and then something just finally, enough of the pieces will come apart. But usually that kind of connection is not usually that difficult to fix. Not always. If you open it up, like I tried to fix the one on my car radio, and the way that they had built it, there was no way to get to it. So that was a whole different set of problems. And so it may not always be a solvable problem, but this one looks like it's just screwed in. So I would take a look at either replacing it or soldering it. You cannot get zero latency without that headphone jack. You're not going to be able to hear yourself at zero latency without anything that goes through. You're going to hear this little time shift that goes on no matter what you're using. That's going to drive you crazy.
Alexander.
Slowly.
Yeah, get it RMA'd. It Shure has a 1-year manufacturer's parts and labor warranty, so go through your dealer, send it back. They will repair it. Looks like shure.com/support/service-repair. You can find information. I think you can start the repair process directly through Shure as well, so that's what I would suggest you do.
Alex?
And one thing that I do with a lot of things that I use often is I have something else that I'm connected to. So like if I'm using a mic, a lot of times that mic, especially if it's sitting somewhere, it's connected to something else. I'm not usually inserting and pulling out of that. Like with my Mix Pre, I have a cable that it's connected to. I connect to the other end of that cable, and I barely ever take the headphone jack out of the Mix Pre itself. In the same way, just as a reminder, is always think about as you start to build systems. The mic is a little hard because you may be packing it and moving it around. But for a lot of things, really consider convenience panels. So convenience panels for all hardware are your friend, which is that you build something on the back of a rack or something else that you're going to be if you're going to do something where you're plugging in and unplugging often, try not to do it with your core hardware as much as you can, so that you're not putting wear and tear, because the cable or the connector is way cheaper than the hardware to replace. Then you just replace the piece and move on.
Bill?
Same thing that Alex was saying, some kind of strain relief. One of the things I do is I always have a bunch of these little right angle connectors around. And if you're using that microphone as an end address and it's pointed out, your cable is constantly putting leverage on that little 3.5 millimeter cable. So I just use one of these little right angle adapters. I plug this into the mic, and then the cable hangs straight down and it doesn't put that strain on it. So I always have 6 or 7 of these laying around that are different kinds of this one. This one's stereo, but they're mono, and they make all sorts of right angle connectors for that kind of thing, for both audio and like USB-C and things like that. I love them having it around.
Hey, we've got 2 new evening shows for you to watch live or later and enjoy. We've got Extra Hours, that's Mondays, and then The Rundown is Thursdays. Both those shows, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. Check them out. Next question.
Jeff Vealey in Henderson, Texas. What's the most affordable way to create a time-limited license for downloadable products?
Courtney?
Well, how good are you at coding? That's the question. That's really the best way to do it. And it depends on what kind of back end you're going to have to support the licensing for this. Are you going to have online licensing servers that have to stay online? It has to call in and validate the license, the validation servers, or are you just going to have it so that once it's unlocked, it's unlocked, you can use it whenever and wherever. I've written a lot of software that has these free, 15-day trials on it, and without having to deal with validation servers and check-ins like that. The cheapest way and the easiest way is to grab the system time when you install it, from the first time it runs and they launch it, it stores somewhere secretively on the hard drive in a hidden encrypted file, the time and date of the first install. And then every time you start it after that, it checks the current date versus the stored date. And once it's passed its time period for use, it turns off and prevents you from running it after that. This is fairly easy to hack for good hackers, can easily get by this stuff. But for the average user, it would probably be more trouble. Depends on how expensive the software is that you're going to license.
Jonus?
You just don't, and you don't tell anyone. That being said, one thing to keep in mind is a product, like nothing is worse than like a product taking your production down because the servers are down or something. There's a couple options that I just want to go through. There is KeyGen, which I've heard good things about. They're now fair source. You can look at all their source code. If you want something more pre-built that does like node locking, all the different things like transferable licenses, checking from now to there, and there is something like License Spring. But of course, this is a development question. And since you probably are also asking about a development question, here's the super simple, time-limited way to do it. You have a device, you somehow derive a device ID from that. You can look at the serial number of the CPU, you look at different things. One thing to keep in mind is, while you don't want to strictly document what all you're looking at, you probably should have a list somewhere and be aware of it. So like every time for example, you wouldn't want to do IP address in there. So you generate a hash, you send it to your server, and then this is a little more modern. You then would use a JSON Web Token, which is encrypted with a private key, and only with your right public key that you embed in your software, you can read it. I have a tiny demo. So basically, this is just an online generator. You would just build your own little server. Claude can probably do it in half a day. So here I have a device ID. I put something here. I say valid till, and then I generate a JSON Web Token. This is what your license then would look like. Most of the time, most systems actually do a step through. So like you give the server your license key and your device ID, and then it gives you this secret file back. But the nice thing is, if I now put this in here, we see it can parse it. And since we have cryptographically signed it with our private key and check it with our public key, we can always be sure that it's a valid signature and that it's actually signed. One problem to keep in mind with this is how do you deal with people losing the license, needing to refresh it, wanting to move it to another device? So at that point, you then do this process, but every 3 days, every 5 days, whatever your cycle that you say someone has to be online has to be. But this would allow you to do like, I don't know, download it for 7 days. And if you need a new license, you need to be online again. You can't move it, something like that.
Alex?
As someone who has developed software for the last 25 years, you can see why I only develop for the Apple Store now. 15% is so much less expensive than, unless I think I'm going to sell a lot of something, than trying to figure this out.
Next question.
Robert Green in Los Angeles. Anyone going to NAMM next week in Anaheim and anticipating anything new?
Alex?
I thought it was interesting that Shure announced so many new things at CES and not necessarily at NAMM. So it'll be interesting to see if they have anything new to show there. I'm not going to be able to get down there. I'm in the middle of a big install. But I think that it will be really interested to see if anybody else shows up. Make sure to post it inside of our Discord, and we'll talk about it next week if there's a lot of new things. Maybe on Wednesday might be a good day. Does it start? It might start after Wednesday, so it might be the week after that we start talking about anything that people might have seen released at NAMM.
If you're enjoying Office Hours, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our channel, or you can even donate. We're a nonprofit, so if you go to officehours.global/donate, you can chip in there, and we'd appreciate it. And there's always opportunities to volunteer, so you can sign up there, officehours.global/volunteer. We appreciate the help and support. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'm anticipating bad weather in my area and probably won't make it into the House of Worship. I now have PTZOptics, Hive Studio, and NDI Bridge in my home studio, and all systems are good. Working on audio, should I use NDI for this or send Dante over the internet?
Jonus?
Since you already have NDI working, I would say just use NDI. Sending Dante over the WAN is still a good bit more intrigued. This is a free utility by NDI that is called Free Audio. What you can do with this is you can take in any hardware device and convert it to NDI. That is visual cables, that's audio devices, anything like that, then pull it over the NDI bridge. One thing to keep in mind is keep in mind that you have to sync it again. So I don't know what your process is, if you're going to stream it from home where you can easily sync both, or if you're just controlling it and you're streaming it from your church. When I was sick about 2 years ago and couldn't go to my church, what I did is I was team viewered in. I had my ATEM multi-view app and could control that through Companion, through a VPN. And then I also used Mixing Station to control the console, the audio console. So it depends what type of audio sources you have. If you really want to backhaul all those audio sources to you and then mix it there and then send it on, or if you just need to monitor it. Otherwise, Video Ninja has a really great way to also just bring your audio over WebRTC back. So it's really low latency. One thing to keep in mind there is I would open up your stream on the CDN, YouTube or whatever it is as well. Sometimes you will hear weirdness within WebRTC that doesn't make it out. You have to get accustomed to that and just relax. Everything will be fine and you'll have a good service.
Other things to keep in mind, because I know you're expecting a few solid days of snow, but not a blizzard by any stretch in Western New York, but you can get a ton of snow. So I've got family up there, so you've got to think about what are all of the choke points in my signal chain. If it's the internet connection, every gateway, every switch, every piece of equipment needs to be on some sort of UPS. So that way, if there is some sort of blip in the power, that the whole stream's not going down, and you're going to need that on both ends. They're at the house of worship, but also wherever you're controlling it from. That way, there's no momentary blips. If something is out for longer, there might not be anything you can do. But again, just think about your whole signal chain and where are the failure points. Next question.
From the QR code, Paul Buchan in Columbus, Ohio. Question for Jonus. You recently recommended Cloudflare as an option for streaming to multiple destinations. Does it compare to MediaLive?
Jonus?
I mean, not really. So one of the things that MediaLive can do is they can transcode and then send it off in different formats to different providers. They have a lot of deep features that Cloudflare Stream doesn't have. The nice thing is, and I'm just going to show you the interface real quick. This is where you would set it up. You can send RTMP or SLT in. You can also send WebRTC in. That being said, if you use WebRTC, you can't use this outputs feature. Then you can create an output feature. Here, the nice thing is it's RTMP or SLT. You type something in there, and then you can enable and disable those whenever you want. The neat thing with this is they don't re-encode it. They just take your package and forward it. They are transmuxing it, to my knowledge. So that has less of impact. Since we were talking at that point about like the cheapest way of how to restream, I would use that instead of restream. That being said, if you have the option and the budget to use something more proper like MediaLive and you're going live to multiple different platforms instead of just multiple different accounts, I would use that because like if you try to go to YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook with the same settings, you will not have as much success. But if I need to go live to 5 YouTube channels, I would totally use that. Or if I want to distribute something, for us, it has been a great tool for things like that, or as a cheap CDN.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. How would you shoot an exercise video where you followed the instructor always showing his back? Example, Tai Chi.
Go ahead, Bill.
So this is a challenge, and there's two ways I would approach it, depending on exactly what I was trying to get accomplished. If you have control over studio space and you have the ability to do it, if you put a camera operator upstage so that they have a shot on the face, they can't use a wide shot because you have the crossing the line problem, which is the performer moving left to right appears to be moving right to left when you cut to the back camera. That goes away if that's a manned camera and the operator is panning to follow the performer. Then it's just a face in the middle of the screen and you have no stage direction problem. So that's the way I do it if I really wanted to be able to focus on the instructor without having him or her move their head around. You know, you just don't want to put them out of their head trying to figure out how to perform. You want them to be natural about the moves. The other thing that you could do if you don't want to go that direction is use a demonstration mirror like they use in cooking shows a lot. Put that down behind them on the same plane so that is backstage of them and they are reflecting, their faces reflecting in that mirror. And then you can push in and get either a tight shot on that or cut to the wider shot and they will be moving in consort. So a stage left to stage right move is a stage left to stage right move on a mirror behind them. So those are the two approaches I'd take, and I just figure out what I was dealing with and how much time and effort I wanted to put into it to figure out which one's best.
Courtney?
Well, according to your question, if you're always going to shoot the instructor from the back, in other words, you want to see the class and then the back of the instructor who's standing in front of them, and you want to do it in an automated way, there are cameras like this one from AVER, the TR535N. It has a dual camera, so it has a wide-angle lens that's fixed down here in the base, and then it has this tracking camera that is auto-tracking. So you can set it to a region of interest or an area of interest that it can track. So you could pull a close-up off the PTZ that's on the top and then cut to a wide shot that is static of the whole room from the backside. Of course, these are both from the same POV, so the same point of view. I don't know if you ever want to come around and see the person's face. That would have to be a separate POV camera from the front.
Alex?
Paul, you didn't give us a budget. Sorry.
Uh-oh. Warning. Where's the klaxon?
You asked, how would you shoot the exercise? I would get a natural motion Prime 41 36 camera motion capture system, and I would get them into a space that's about 30 by 30, and then I would motion capture the whole thing. That way you get all the views that you want. And I say this as someone who's done it. So we did 400 moves for exercise, not martial arts. So we've been doing martial arts captures for 25 years in one way or another, Vicon, again, OptiTrack or natural motion. And we have actually someone in our group, Nick Justishin, has a motion capture system in Drexel. Maybe someday we can try to figure out if we find an expert in Philadelphia, we might be able to figure out a way to get a capture done there. But that's the way to do it, because then you can put it into your MetaQuest, or you can put it into your Apple Vision Pro. You can stand right next to them. You can just look around, walk around them. Those are all the things that you want to do in it.
You didn't mention hiring James Cameron to direct. He does a lot of that motion.
I was thinking Michael Bay. Like for Tai Chi, Michael Bay Tai Chi. It's you're remaining calm with all the explosions going on.
Now with
around
explosions.
You. Yeah, exactly.
Next question.
From the QR code, Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida, troubleshooting a FEELWORLD Quad-Split Monitor 4K Mac Mini M4 HDMI to monitor input 1 won't pass through to monitor output 1. There's a signal, but output is black. A Dell PC passes through. Why doesn't the Mac?
Go ahead, Alex.
I'm going to guess it has something to do with HDCP. So there's some kind of HDCP flag. The Mac is notoriously rough about HDCP flags because Apple wants to partner with entertainment companies. So most likely it's some kind of flag there that's stopping it, especially if you're trying to do any copywritten. It should just pass through if it's not doing copywritten, but it may not. And we've definitely seen this problem. And FEELWORLD is not your highest supplier. So I think that most likely they're doing something funny with the HDMI, and the Mac doesn't like it.
And because you are working with FEELWORLD, and it is a little bit on the quirky end of the spectrum, you may want to go into your Mac's display. If it's not copyrighted content that's causing an HDCP flag, if you're still not getting a signal, I would hop into your system settings and then play with your refresh rate, because the refresh rate might not pass through accurately. The other thing that I would do is, instead of futzing around with these buttons for larger and smaller and all that, I would just go down to the advanced and show your resolutions as a list, and then cycle through the different resolutions and the different resolution and refresh rate combinations and see if you're still having that issue consistently throughout.
Yeah, I just want to underline what CJ just said, because it's a great tip. One of the issues is that that the Apple does this quad pixel thing, and you'll see one that says 1080p low resolution. That's actually just pure 1080p, and it'll change your frame rates that are available. And that's you may want to, yeah, I think CJ may be onto something that, so if it's not HDCP, it could be one of those settings and refresh rates that it doesn't support. So that's a good one. Let's get one more in. Let's get one more in.
One more in. Next
Jonus
question.
is here.
Jonas.
Jonas.tel in Stuttgart is asking, anyone going to ISE this year?
Go ahead, Alex.
When is it, Jonas?
It's the 4th to the 7th of February.
Oh, it's coming right up. Are you going?
I'm going, and it has become my favorite exhibition because it's so simple to navigate. Like, it's hall after hall. You can just walk straight through.
Where is it?
In Barcelona, which is also part why I like it so much.
But it's also, is it more straightforward to walk through and find things than the Rye?
Yes. Like, it's literally like you would love it.
That's everything
it's
in the whole
literally a
world.
grid. It's literally a grid.
Yeah,
like, even it's nothing against NAB for navigating. And the great thing is, since it's called Integrated Systems Europe, all these vendors finally understand that they need to work together. So, like, the first time I was there, I was like, what is going on? You walk up to the Zoom booth, and suddenly they show you, hey, here's how we work with Teams. Here's how we work with WebEx. Here's how we work with Google Meet. And that is just this red line that goes through everything. And I've been saying it's the next big broadcast convention. And this year is the first time that they have a separate part just for broadcast AV. And everyone is there. Ross, Grass Valley, VisRT, NDI. So I think it's going to be a really interesting one.
That's awesome.
Go ahead, Bill.
We talked about it just a little bit on the show yesterday, actually, and Ronny Hofsøy, who was on the program yesterday, is also going. So we thought we have almost the bare minimum for a little crew to do some after-hours coverage. So get your questions in, maybe.
Awesome. Well, coming up on Office Hours, we've got our live-only shows. It's the members-only edition weekend. Saturday's our Q&A, and following that, about half an hour after that show ends, we'll have our new panelist at 8:30, and then the panelist at 9. Sunday's also a live-only show. That's our introspection shows, where we talk a little bit more philosophy, talk about the show, talk about the industry. We'll chew on things for a little while longer. It's a great time, but you got to be in Makana to do it. Thanks to the panel for being here today. It's a privilege to spend an hour getting smarter with everybody. And every time I think, like, man, I've got a pretty good handle on this stuff, Jonus will come up with something that is just like so out of the left field, and then my brain just opens up. It's like, here's all these things you don't know. So thank you for being here. Thanks to the back-end crew. You keep us organized, make us look and sound good all around the show. There's no way we can do it without you. And we also couldn't do it without the producers. Your great questions keep us going. And we had so many, we had to send some back today. So if you had that in via the QR code, we'll work that back into the show. If you ask in Makana, it's back in your notes. So next time you're in Makana, you can get it in there. If we would have to do this in person today, go all around the world, the Tlaloc traversal would have been 35,000 miles. That's 56,000 kilometers, 274 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in After Hours. Bye-bye.
I did test a new online edit system for shows in about 30 minutes. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Hopefully
Very nice. Yeah. Hey, by the way, the Belkin Vision Pro case, excellent.
Yeah. It's very nice. It feels very luxurious. Smaller. I was just a little worried about it. I put so much stuff in my backpack. Right. I'm afraid it's going to get crushed. So I have a hard case too. So I like the Belkin one generally.
It has a nice pad at the bottom, but like I found getting it in and out of the backpack was a lot nicer because it's so much more compact.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence. I like it a lot. It's much nicer than the other ones I have. It's just one of the, and so I'm generally keeping it in there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I travel, my backpack is painfully crushed, and I'm just afraid it's an expensive piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Amen. All right.
I see.
Thanks. See you tomorrow.